Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This is the second part of Colin's interview. Sit back, listen, enjoy and review. We'll see you at the end.
And all of a sudden I'm doing murders, and then I did Operation Welling.
What was Operation Welling?
Operation Welling was jointly between the Met and BTP and Camden and the other Islington Council. Clean up King's Cross.
Right.
Drugs and sex and drugs and rock and roll at King's Cross.
It wasn't gentrified then, was it?
No, not at all.
Now.
I was so shocked, Paul. I went down. I did a little bit of work for Camden Council about 5-6 years ago, and I got off the train at King's Cross and looked at it. I'm in the wrong flat. I've got off the wrong stop. You know, just unbelievable. But then it was. So what we had was a hide, which was there until a few years ago, right up on the top of King's Cross, like matte black wood, with cameras in, and we had test purchasers, and they'd spend 6 weeks buying crack and heroin, mostly crack.
Yeah.
And then we'd all sit up in the control room and wait for the same people to come out and then leap on them and nick them. And I didn't really want to do it. I've never really been that keen on doing drugs work, but I learned a load. I learned a load about, so I had to be trained to do controlling, test purchase, undercover operations, stuff like that, you know. And it got me into that sort of side of covert policing that I knew nothing about. And I was really pleased that I did it in the end. And I did that there. And then they did another reorganisation in the Met. And I got the chance to go to be a staff officer.
Oh, did you? At the yard?
No, at area headquarters, Edmonton.
Right.
And there's a guy called Tony Comben, who, again, sadly is dead now, but he ended up at Wethersfield as the deputy of the MOD police.
Did he really?
When Wally Boylan was the chief there, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was the commander support for the old area, but was going to be the commander crime for the new area.
Right.
And he had a civilian staff officer for his current role, but he wanted a staff officer for his future role. And he wanted it now because essentially my job was creating the crime OCUs as they had. So when they went to permanent murder squads and permanent child protection teams, all the other stuff was creating that. And basically, I spent a long time going around to divisional chief superintendents and saying, I'm going to take 3 of your DCs and 1 of your cars, but we'll never come calling again, sort of thing, you know. And it was that. And I learned a lot there about sort of strategic stuff. And that was the turkeys voting for Christmas, because the unofficial kind of gentleman's agreement was that by the time we finished all this, my job would be as DI on the newly formed stolen vehicle squad for that area, which I really fancied.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'd done 2 years as DI in division, done a few murders, bits and bobs, so it was okay. I was happy with doing that. And then 2 things happened. One was that Tony Coleman got offered the job at the MOD police, and with his pensions was he went, and somebody I didn't know replaced him, nice enough guy. But actually, this is the turkeys voting for Christmas, the Home Office took car crime out of the key performance indicators, and we could no longer justify having a dedicated stolen vehicle squad. And so I wrote off my own job and said, no, we're not doing it now. And so all I had left was to go on one of the child protection teams or the murder squads. And I didn't want to do child protection. I had a young family. I didn't really want to do the murder squad. So I could have stayed and been the new guy's staff officer, but I didn't. I thought I'd done enough of that. And out of the blue, I bumped into an old superintendent called Margaret Barker, who'd been my superintendent for a while and I hadn't really got on with, to be honest. To put it mildly, at Holloway. And she was looking for a crime manager because there were no promotions. She didn't have, and she didn't think that she didn't have an in-house DI she could sort of temporarily promote. And she said, how about we bury the hatchet and come and work for me? So I went and did an interview and got the job. So I was crime manager at Chingford for a bit. And that was interesting. I had a good time there as well, really. And part of that, I got involved in doing some stuff around repeat victimisation for burglaries, and we formed the first I think it was the first in the country, certainly the first vulnerable persons unit. So I got domestic violence and mispers and elder abuse all together under one roof with proper detectives, which is quite good. And we tried looking at repeat victimisation for domestic violence as well. And part of the repeat victimisation stuff, I went up to Yorkshire and I went to visit Bradford where they were doing it, and I got chatting to them then and got on with the guy there. And that was when they advertised in the back of the police review for DCIs, and the Met still weren't having promotions. And my first wife had never been, I think, north of Cambridge in her life.
Right.
But I applied and I got it, and we went up there and we got a house we lived near Holmfirth last summer.
Oh, yeah,
nice.
nice.
Huddersfield, south of Huddersfield, between Huddersfield and Barnsley. And we had room for the horses that they had, and her and my daughter, and my little boy started growing up talking like Dickie Bird and saying watter and mud and school. He doesn't now. And it was all quite good. And I was on division in North Bradford for about 18 months and then didn't apply, but just got told you're head of force intelligence from next week. And so I was at Wakefield as head of intelligence, which was a good job. And we'd sort of done this, what became the forerunner to the National Intelligence Model, and we had this sort of tasking process. And the DCI Force Intelligence was right at the centre. I chaired the weekly tasking meeting for all the force level squads. And it was quite amusing because I talk like I talk, and it was Yorkshire. And I'd come back to London, see my mates for a weekend, and I'd go into the office, and Dawn, particularly, who was my deputy office manager, I think she came from Pontefract or Castleford or somewhere, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Sutton, you've been to London this weekend, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did actually, had you? You're talking old Cockney again." See, like that. And it was quite amusing. There was a guy called Jerry Dickinson, who's a great bloke, who was the drug squad DCI. He's actually the kind of model for Frost.
Oh, right.
West Yorkshire have got quite a good history of assisting drama, like they do with Happy Valley. The reason Happy Valley is so good is that lots of reasons. It's very well written and they're great actors. But actually West Yorkshire have embraced it and helped them to make it,
visionary. If only other forces, we see that now. If only other forces would dig in.
Yeah, so they've done that, and Jerry was when they did Frost, they helped with even the sort of Frost warrant card was modelled on a West Yorkshire warrant card at the time, and Jerry was a bit like David J. Salisbury at the start. He had silverish hair. Jerry, a good guy, and they'd take the mickey out of me not knowing their words because they've got words like growler is a meat pie, or meat something very different in the south, I think. Although you could say no. Anyway, and snicket and ginnel, which are like little alleys, things like that. And of course, I could sometimes occasionally say words. And they had this thing that they thought anything south of Barnsley was the Met. So I'd have, at first says, boss, DI from Met wants you. So I go to the phone. Hello, Colin, son. Oh, hello, it's John Steele. I'm the DCI Force Intelligence in Devon and Cornwall. It's not the Met. It's south of Barnsley. It must be the Met. They were great. I loved it there. I loved working there. It was brilliant. You had so much variation because you've got City, you've got Leeds, you've got Bradford. Big towns like Huddersfield, Halifax, this sort of thing. But you've also got the rural stuff, and you've got bits of everything, deprivation, and you've got social issues, you've got diversity issues, just got all sorts going on there. So it was a really good place to work.
And what year was this?
96 I went up there. And what happened was we had a TSU, Technical Support Unit, which was mine, and TP, Test Purchase Undercover Unit, which was mine. And we had the Telephone Intelligence Unit. So I wanted the NHS to do this about getting appointments to see a GP, because I don't know about you, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Trying to. So when I went there, one of the big problems was telephone intelligence, telephone work, cell sighting and stuff had just really taken off.
Yeah.
And everybody on the divisions, I think they had 17 divisions in West Yorkshire then, wanted stuff done for their sort of load of requirements, and we couldn't cope.
Yep.
And this backlog was sort of 5 weeks or something. And I'm saying, not being funny, but there'll be a load of those that 5 weeks on, it's no use to them now anyway. So,
not relevant.
Right. So I sent an email out to him saying, right, every single request you've made has gone in the bin. year zero, Pol Pot, we started from scratch.
Yeah.
If any of the ones you've got you still need, send them in again. Cut the waiting list down 3 days.
Done.
Easy, isn't it? You know, just be bold to do something. But yes, I did. That was good there, and we had that going on. And Keith Hellawell was the chief when I went up there. He became the drug czar. You know?
Yeah.
And he was. I quite liked Keith. He was nice. And they literally do. You literally do go to see the chief when you get promoted. You don't quite get touched on the shoulder. But I went with the inspectors that were getting promoted, chief inspector, the same day as me, and we go into his office and he welcomes us and congratulates us there. And you know, it doesn't sort of happen by an email like it did in the Met. You actually get, and they called us. What I said, oh yeah, he'll be going to see the chief soon. You know, meaning he's going to get promoted soon. And he was quite a good guy. And what he did was, a lot of the West Yorkshire Police buildings at that time had mobile phone masts on their roof because they tended to be in those positions. And yeah, it's quite a hilly sort of area, and it was good. And they rented it to and somehow it had been done that rental, which was £250,000 a year, maybe more, didn't sort of go through the books. It was like nothing dishonest, but it went into a separate budget.
Wow!
And he gave that budget or substantial amount of it to the technical support unit,
right? So
that. You know, virtually on a weekly basis, they'd say, "Oh, can you come over? We've got a demonstration of some new way of defeating alarms." Because I had a covert entry person as well, and it was just really, you know, it was like being M or Q or whatever it is. You know, people just do all these toys, and then Keith Hellawell left, new chief came in, and somebody showed it. I said, "Oh no, we're not doing that," and our budget got cut to about 40 grand. You know, so we lost that. But yeah, it was good. It was a good place to work.
He had a very strong view around drugs and whatever. What's your view on the decriminalisation of?
It'd be something else for the government to tax and waste their money on, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the situation we had when I was on my division in Bradford, we had 2 estates, Thorpe Edge and I can't remember the other one, what it's called. One was Thorpe Edge, anyway. And they were like 1950s low-rise.
Yeah.
And there were big drug problems, heroin problems on them. And they also had a system, I don't know what it was like in Essex, but in the Met, like informant payments had to be done by quite senior officers. West Yorkshire, up to something, £250, you divisional DCI could.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what they would do is they would get everybody on these estates were informing on Ravenscliffe, that's the other one, Ravenscliffe and Thorpe Edge. Everyone on Ravenscliffe and Thorpe Edge was informing on everybody else. Yeah. Sometimes people who lived in the same flat would inform each other. And I was in the bar, because we still had police bars there then as well, upstairs, with Mick Oddie, who was an ex-Met PC who'd gone back up home to Yorkshire, and who was my DI at the division. And we'd had a beer or two, and our wives were picking us up, and we'd put in the world to rights like you do. And he said, "What's the overtime budget on this division?" So I said, "I think it was £7 million. Let's say it was £7 million for the year." He said, "Right." He said, "If we were to cut the overtime by half and spend £3.5 million on wholesale heroin and give it away at the front counter, we'd stop more crime than anything else we could do." And he was right, because essentially what was happening was somebody would come in, or somebody would say, "Well, I've got informant information, that video recorder, remember them, VCR that was nicked out of that flat yesterday, so-and-so's got it." And the project team, as they call them, like crime squad, the proactive team, would go around there, get a warrant quickly, go around there, do the door, get it back, nick the person with it, and the informant would get 20 quid. And the informant would spend the 20 quid at the same heroin dealer that the criminal would have spent the 20 quid he'd have got if he'd have sold the video recorder. And it's just...
vicious circle.
But I must tell you about something out there. Something that was different. Again, I don't know Essex. The Met was so much more sort of rule bound, and I don't mean West Yorkshire in a slack way, but they just allowed you to be more creative in how you were policing it. And one of the things we were able to do was we rented cars from a garage on the division that like they're part exchanges. And we had to get them MOT'd by the police workshop to make sure they were roadworthy. But they would charge a tenner a week for each of these cars.
Wow.
So we'd get, old sort of Maestros and Montegos and sort of rusty, and use them for the project team. And it was fantastic. Yeah, it was really good. Well, we got some information. It was good information. At one of these estates, what was happening was a burglar was going round, doing a burglary, or sometimes two, the bags, getting on the mobile, calling what they call a private hire, but minicab we call in London, but to come pick them up and take them home. And they said, and we've watched, and this is happening. So there's a book in my thing there, in my cupboard somewhere. The Irish Detective in Yorkshire by Jerry O'Shea. Jerry O'Shea is my DS and my crimes.
Right.
And he says, I've got an idea, boss. What do you think of this? So we've got this Austin Montego, F registration Austin Montego. He went down to Bradford City Council and got one of the private hire plates, but had it blank, not engraved with the registration, so we could put it on with a stencil and a pen. From the property store, this is the slightly dubious legalistic thing of it, although this is before a ripper, so it might be okay. Got a scanner from the property store, scanned, and what they did was they waited for what they thought was a burglar on the estate calling up for a private hire minicab. Put a uniform car into the real one, routine stop, sir, is this your car? Have you got insurance, Slip the Montego in with all the kit in, burglar, swag, in the car, where do you want to go, mate? Drives him straight in the backyard. And we did it twice. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, but it is.
It's just...
audacious.
It is audacious, legal, audacious, but it puts them on edge. They're the ones that are thinking about, well, actually, if I ring up for a cab, how do I know it's not going to be old Bill?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, people criticise the disclosure of tactics, but the fact is, if somebody's listening to this and they would have used that as a tactic, then we're narrowing their options.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right. Yeah.
It is, it goes with that.
I'm not sure that it's still, maybe it does still go on, but yeah, it worked fantastically well. And I took Operation Welling up there effectively. We did an operation over 38 weeks. We had 2 weeks off for Christmas. So we did 2 weeks. Each division said, you do the intel for us, you get us your drug dealers you want targeted, I'll bring test purchasers and we'll do it. And
it's a great tactic.
270 arrests over 38 weeks.
Great
in
tactic.
Budget as well. It was really good. And there was a great... what happened was you'll probably remember, Paul, about that time, about 98, 99 maybe, the National Crime Squad was formed from the regional crime squads. So we did have a regional technical support unit at Wakefield. And as soon as the regional became the national, they were supporting the National Crime Squad. And the other forces in the region couldn't get their help. Because we had our own, so we were the biggest force in the North East region, all of a sudden we started getting requests from other smaller forces saying, can you help us with this, can you help us with that? And where I could have, a lot of it, probably 50% of it was professional standards type work.
Yeah.
And I did quite a lot of getting involved in that while I was there. And, I had a phone call from my opposite number in Cleveland Police who said, we've got a problem with a pub just near Middlesbrough, I think, somewhere. Flat roof pub, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Says, and they're selling all sorts of stuff in there. We can't get near them. They make us every time. And I had this guy called Trevor Taylor, who was my lorry theft man, but he was also a level 1 undercover officer.
Right.
And he had hair down here, beard, and he was a good guy, but very clever tactically for this. So I said, what are we going to do then, Sarah? And he thought about it. He says, tell you what, boss, we're going to have hen night. I said, what? He says, we're going to have a hen night. He says, those young officers you use for doing the Operation Rockwood, which was the Welling, the drug ones? Yeah. He says, get 8 of those. So I picked 8 of them, all female under 30.
Yep.
And the instruction was that they were to parade at Wakefield headquarters on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m, dressed as if they were going for a night out, and that I would reimburse up to 3 alcoholic drinks they'd had before they came.
Brilliant.
So basically, I'm then going in there this Saturday evening, doing a briefing to these sort of giggly 20-something girls who've been drinking, to explain what it was. And something, I'll be the bride, so we gave her the veil and the L plates and all this sort of thing. And Trevor got a force minibus up, marked minibus. I didn't go, I just did the briefing. Trevor drove him up there. goes to this pub. They all get out. Obviously, we've done the research. We found the name of the nightclub where they say they're going afterwards and blah, 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 blah. They go in there, start talking, and cuss. You can imagine the blokes in the pub, they got these all over them. They're playing pool with them and throwing darts. And anyone sort us out? Talk to them. Yeah, what do you want? Well, what do you got? And all buy, all go out that door. Cleveland Police come in that door.
Done.
Rest them all. Yeah.
It's a great tactic. I'm sure they... please, God, I hope they still use it.
I'm sure they do. So, yeah, that was that. Then I got divorced, sadly. I split with my wife and had to come back to the south, rattling around a big house in Yorkshire on my own. So I came back. Met wouldn't have me. No, they wouldn't have me. They didn't have space for me. Didn't want didn't want any DCIs still. So I applied for Surrey and I had to go and do the... I've been DCI for 4 years at this point, done division and force intelligence, and I had to go and do the assessment centre with all the DIs and inspectors. I passed it, and they gave me a job. I worked for 6 months with Mark Rowley on and off doing the implementation of National Intelligence Model, which was interesting. Gave me a lot of respect for him, and
he's having it tough at the moment.
Tough gig, it's a tough gig. I think to his credit, he could have just said no, couldn't he? He didn't need to do it. He could. And I don't think with Mark it's for self-aggrandisement or, because he wants to say, I was commissioner. I think he genuinely wants to help and wants to do the best job he can.
But I think that Dame Cressida was in the same boat. I think she wanted to help.
Different way, but yeah, absolutely.
But, the night of the long knives and, she might have made some wrong decisions around her senior management. But she was all about policing. She was, and she. I mean, I'll never forget the help she gave me and Lynn Owens, who's now the deputy commissioner on Minstead. So I mean, they were, but so I did that. Rest of the time, I really didn't like being in Surrey. It wasn't very busy. So how long were you there for?
2 years.
And then back to the Met.
Back to the Met. Yeah, we did this one of these. They called them critical incident weekends.
Yeah.
And I did that, and it was run by Bill Griffiths, who was DAC in the Met. And found out there's a guy called George Roden who played like the Neville Lawrence character in it, if you like. And George was a DI in the Met. He was chairman of the Met BPA. Well, back in about 1976, 1977 in Enfield, George was the butchery boy when I was the deli boy at the Co-op.
Oh, wow.
We were Saturday boys together. We liked the same sort of music and all this sort of thing. So we knew each other quite well. And George and I were sitting up talking. I hadn't seen him for some time, nice guy. And Bill Griffiths had this habit of getting his guitar and some song sheets out, and he'd sit in the bar singing. It was good fun. And he eventually sort of said, what are you doing messing about in Surrey? I said, the Met wouldn't have me. And he said, well, write me a letter. So I did. And I just started doing the deep cut investigation then.
Oh, yeah, the suicide.
Yeah. And so I sort of bailed out on that. But I was so unhappy there, working there, that it was just... And it was like coming home to... It's like when you go back to your parents when you've been away from home, the cutlery's the same, the crockery and the smell. And, I'll tell you about the interview. I was interviewed by a superintendent called John Sweeney, who I kind of knew. He was North London. I knew him more because he was an East Herts football referee.
Right.
And a really, really lovely guy. He did, I think he's really unwell now, so I've heard. I don't know. But he did a lot of service, 35 years or so. He was the SIO for Keith Blakelock.
Oh, was he?
I really wanted to sort of try and solve it before he retired. So, but anyway, he was superintendent on Trident. And I'd been advised by somebody, I won't name who, to apply to say I want to be an SIO on Trident. They said, because they can't get anyone to do that, so you're guaranteed to get a job sort of thing. Okay. So I had this interview, funnily enough, at Putney at Jubilee House, where I ended up working. And John said to me, what's your average workload a year as an SIO in Surrey? I said, well, it was 0.8 of a case a year, but they've cut the numbers now, so it's going to be about 1.2, they reckon. He said, well, on Trident, your workload is likely to be something like 20 cases a year. I said, right. He said, well, are you happy with that? Do you think you'd be able to cope with that change in your workload? I said, more than happy with it, sir. I said, I'd absolutely love it. I said, I think it's just absolutely perfect. He said, well, why'd you say that? I said, well, because if you've only got 0.8 of a job a year and you mess it up, you've got no excuse. If you've got 20, you've got every excuse in the world. And he laughed like that. And he said, And he phoned me up later that night. In fact, I was on call. We were doing Anthony Miela, the M25 rapist. He's dead now as well. We had a case that we thought did relate to that in Epsom, and I was up on that, and I was at Epsom Police Station, and got a phone call. So he says, that answer about the workload. I said, did you really mean that? I said, no, I was just being a bit flippant. I said, but I would like to be a bit busier. He said, well, yeah, you don't have to be that busy though, do you? He said, would you fancy, do you really want to try it, or would you rather just be on an ordinary murder squad? I said, right, I'd really be on an ordinary murder squad, but he says, oh, that's right, and that's what I write out for. And that's how
you ended up.
That's how I ended up going back to the Met, and I went back in September 2002, so I'd done 2 years and 2 months in Surrey. And they had space to be as an SRO from the following January, but Bill Griffiths said we could actually use you on the murder review group for a couple of months to fill in before then if you want to come back sooner. So I said, well, yeah, I'll do that, because you'll kind of get me back into the swing of the Met, if you like, without being hands-on. And I quite enjoyed that. The first thing we did was a review of the MIR in the Sutton murders.
Oh, yeah.
Thing to do that I got involved in, and various other sort of Met ones. And I always had a big thing about the review group, that they were too concerned with arse covering. They were too concerned with making sure that the Holmes account had all the I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yeah.
And actually less concerned about trying to find investigative opportunities to do it. But they still like it. And funnily enough, just before I retired, we just nicked Grant on Minstead, so I was looking for something else to do. And they had a temporary superintendent role in the murder review group. And I went along to the interview, got interviewed for it. Actually, no, it's just before we nicked him. It's 5th November, I remember now, just before we nicked him. And I went along to the interview, and it was the stage where I was doing night duty, looking for him on the surveillance and doing my day job, and I had this interview for a job. I went along, another guy from my special course, Keith Blakelock, was the chief super that interviewed me. And I gave him that and said, that's what I think my focus should be. If I didn't get the job, somebody else did. And funnily enough, I was talking to a very senior officer when I got my commendation for Levi job. That was the last day's duty I ever did.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And 10th of December 2010. So I had leave to take up until my 30 years. And I was talking to one of the DACs, and she said, why you shouldn't be retiring? I mean, Cresta said that. She said, well, I understand it's your last day. Yeah. Why are you retiring? Well, because I've not really got much else to do at the moment. Yeah, I haven't got a team. I'm just waiting for Minstead to go to court, and I'm bored stiff. Well, you should have told us. I said, I have said. And I applied for the job at the murder review group, and people didn't like my idea, thinking it should be more focused on investigations and less on administration. Well, that's exactly what, that's exactly how it should be. That's exactly why didn't you get the job? I said, well, look at me, I didn't get the job, So I sort of bowed out. But yeah, that's what I did when I first went back to the Met, and then I went to Barnes with my murder squad and did that, with the same team from January 2003 until June 2009.
So how did the Met, the murder of Millie Dowler, which is well documented, and there's lots out there, but how did you get involved in that from the Met? What, because it was a Surrey job, wasn't it?
It was. It always was a Surrey job. Well, it actually happened. I was down there only last week at a dog show, Kempton Park. Near Kempton Park Racecourse, there's a PP garage, and it was my birthday. And I was in the car looking at Levi Belfield's. We'd just identified him as being our suspect for murdering Emily de la Grange.
Right.
And we were out looking for his van. And I've got his intelligence printout, which is about 2.5 inches thick. And I've got it in the car, and Richard Ambrose, my DI, one of my DIs in that team, on that job, was paying for the petrol and getting the coffees in the garage. And I was looking, I lived there. And I saw that he lived in Walton-on-Thames. Well, Walton-on-Thames is where we'd found Emily's phone. It's where we tracked that to where we hadn't found the phone. The phone switched off there. We'd found other property of hers in the river. So there was a connection between that. And so I looked at them. I didn't know where this address was in Walton-on-Thames. So I got my Met A to Z and looked in that, and it covered sort of around the edges as well, to see how close this place he used to live at was to the river where he'd thrown Emily's belongings.
Right.
And the answer was it wasn't. It was the other side of town. But because I'd been in Surrey at the time, I never involved in Millie Dale at all. I was doing deep cut, but I'd been in Surrey and knew that much about it. And I thought, oh, bloody hell, where he lived is like 20 yards from where she was last seen.
Mm.
And we checked the date. Oh, God, at the time that she was as well. And I still had, I say, you keep numbers in your phone, don't you? I still had Brian Marjoram, who was the DI, acting DCI, who was on Operation Ruby, the Millie Dowler case then. I had his number in my phone from when I was in Surrey, so I phoned him up. It was about 9 o'clock at night. And said, I want to tell you, let me tell you a story, sort of thing. He told me about Levi Burford, told him what I'd found. And I'd never forget what he said. So, it's an old phrase, but it's the time I heard it that I remember it. He said, God, the hair's standing up on my neck now.
Mm.
And then, if you've seen the drama and read the book, it was absolutely true what happened. I went along to try and convince the Surrey superintendent, who was a lovely guy, and given, my then wife worked for Surrey Police. She was their head of intelligence. Well, she's now the head of intelligence for Surrey and Sussex. And she was the principal analyst or whatever for Surrey at the time. And I knew Steve through that. And I just couldn't understand why they were just blank. Oh, yeah, well, we've got our own suspect, Colin, and we might get round to looking at this manuals, but thank you very much for coming. And I deliberately wound him up. I deliberately said, right, okay, Steve, what I don't understand is we all coppers here, and I don't understand why a copper like you doesn't want to solve it. And, of course, that's absolute red rag to a bull. And he sort of stared, that's monstrous, that's outrageous. And the second he did that, it's exactly as it was on the drama. My mobile rings, it's the forensic manager, so I think, shit, we found something. So sorry, I've got to take this. I leave poor Joe Brunt. Poor Brunt's sitting there, superintendent, going apoplectic at her and jabbing down his finger down at her. And I had this, only about a 30-second, 1-minute phone call with the forensic manager. Went back in from the corridor to the office and Joe's sitting there on her own. I said, where they gone? She said, I think the meeting's over. I said, shit, what have we done now? So I go home and Louise's at home and she said, the funny thing, Steve Scott's texted me and asked me for your phone number. So, okay, no worries. Yeah, good, did you give it to him? Yeah. And then he phoned me up and he said, reflecting on what you said today, I think we should look at him. And it was like 8 o'clock at night while I was at home. Not on the plane like it happened in the drama. And to their credit, they got their teeth stuck into him and they did the right thing. They were really, really tenacious. I'm not always Surrey Police's greatest fan, but they stuck at that. They didn't charge him until 8 years after a body was found.
Yeah.
I'd retired by the time we went to court for that.
Had you really?
Yeah. And funnily enough, one of the newspapers, a mutual friend of ours, maybe, were going to get me a press pass to sit and cover it for them. But I spoke to Brian Altman, who was prosecuting. I know Brian very well from our cases he's done with us. I said, what do you think? He said, I think it'll be a circus because you'll wind Belfield up if you're there. I said, yeah, that's why I asked you first. So I didn't do it. But yeah, that was... And, there were all things around that there were some things that were done badly and there were some things that were done well, and... I think the big issue is if you look at things like Sutton, if you look at things like that, and Essex, what's Essex, 3,500 cops? Or
under,
Surrey's about the same, bit smaller.
A lot smaller actually.
1,800.
1.9 million members of public live there. Yeah, so
and then Cambridgeshire with Holly and Jessica. Yeah, Sutton murders. Things like.
We went up there to support that.
But that's the problem is you don't get the depth of exposure to things that you haven't got that big body of people that Met have got to throw loads of resources in. And something like a high-profile Cat A+ murder investigation is hugely resource-intensive.
Oh, it is huge.
And one of the reasons it's so hugely resource-intensive is because the public want to help.
Yeah.
And every time they want to help, they create at least one, if not several, actions that cops are going to do.
Well, we've done the recent work with Revelation around Danielle Jones, and I was on the Danielle Jones inquiry. That was enormous. Yeah. We still haven't recovered a body, blah, blah. Yeah. But it's huge, and it is. We were very lucky because we were well staffed at the time, and I think it's because I was on there at the initial stages. Money was no object. So if we flew people to South Africa, we went off to the FBI, so it was, but you're quite right. We adopted the systems that the Metropolitan Police were running because it had been tried and tested.
But I think there's always a thing. Nobody wants to go back to the, called in the yard, as it was pre-amalgamations in the 60s and 70s, where you got tiny, Southend Borough would have been your white helmets, stuff, Huddersfield Borough in West Yorkshire so it's great for the chief super at Huddersfield now because they probably sold it like most police stations, but at the time it was like the chief constable's office, so he had a little flat there and a shower and stuff like that, because it was a little tiny borough police force, and they had no hope of doing an investigation like that. So they'd always called in the yard, and that's where the bag man comes from, because it's the bag carrier thing is the superintendent and the bag carrier, and nobody wants to go back to that. And what I gathered, it didn't matter in West Yorkshire because they were big enough force to absorb it, but Surrey, we're not, I won't say they're too per tell because they got help in doing the searching and stuff like that, but the actual detecting, they didn't. And Craig Denholm was the head of CID then, ex-Met himself, and he put a paper up, I think, to NCS saying, is there an NCS role in this? Because I think what he thought was, would that take it away from this stigma of saying we're calling the Met in if it was a national thing and you got people from all over? But I still think that's, because I didn't have the best of time in Surrey Police, I think part of the difficulty was they didn't like it that the Met found Millie Dale's killer. And worse than that, it wasn't just a Met, it was me and the Met, Yeah. And it's something that I find a little bit of an anathema because I'm always so task focused it's untrue. Yeah, I don't really care about, I don't do office politics at all. I found my niche, I found something that I really liked doing, and I did it the best I could for as long as I could, essentially. And I'd get, the last superintendent I had that sent me across to do Minstead. And I'm sure in his mind was, well, you think you're so bloody clever, go and have a go at this will bring you down a peg or two. And we got lucky. But he'd literally say to me, you weren't at the health and safety meeting today. Mm-hmm. So no, he said, well, actually, you haven't been at a health and safety meeting for the last 6 meetings. So I've been busy investigating murders, sir. Yeah, but you have to go to this. And he's right. I mean, in a process time, he's right. But I would say, well, explain to me exactly how going to any one of those meetings would make me more likely to serve one of my murders, and I'd probably turn up. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's big or clever, and I'm not saying that it was the best thing for me personally, because it probably wasn't. But I think it was the best thing for doing the job that was before us.
And serve the victim.
Serve the victims. And I think serve my team.
Yeah.
I think actually the attitude that I had, I didn't, I always said it's my job is to argue with them up there. Your job is to go down and serve the murder. And I would kind of insulate them from all that sort of crap that I could. And as long as they were doing what they needed to do, then that was okay, and I'd do that. And I can't name names, so I've got to be very careful. I might even not name the gender, because then it'll take it even more away. Because I had a lot of women. I had 13 women on my team, which I actually think, my personal view is it doesn't matter. And my personal view is, in many cases, they're better detectives than men.
I agree.
But it would happen that the email would come out saying these are people who are selected, and everybody else would get it first before me, it seemed. And there'd always be loads of women left on, because nobody seemed to...
But when I ran an office...
I was fine. Absolutely fine.
If I had a team of women on there, I knew they'd get the work done, because the blokes are magpies. They look at the bright and shiny. They won't finish the job that they've got in hand. They'll move on to the next one. They'll do a bloody good job, but they'll leave a bit untouched, and therefore someone else is, and one of the girls would end up... That's not misogynistic. That's fact. Yeah. How did you feel? I mean, we'll come on to the Night Stalker and what have you, but how did you feel when you turned that television on? Because you're published, you've written books and what have you. How did you feel when you turned the television on and you saw Martin Clunes playing Colin Sutton? Because I've got to say, I haven't met Martin Clunes, but I've met you, and I've watched the programme, and he obviously spent a long time watching you.
He didn't spend a long time. He did spend time. He probably before the first one, we spent about, I don't know, probably about 8 hours in each other's company.
Right.
He's a really fine actor.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I say to him myself, I say, look, you'll always be Gary Strang from Men Behaving Badly to me.
Yeah.
And it is funny. But he picked up. And the only thing, and he solved it. I mean, feedback or whatever, we talked about it, obviously. The second one, he was better at it because he wasn't so serious. And I said, that's ironic because you're known as for acting comedy, not just as a comedy actor. But I said, and you played it too straight. I'm not that serious. I'm not that straight about things. But he took that on board and he did a fantastic job in the second one. But my friends and family say, I mean, he's a good guy. He's a
good actor. And,
he's a good actor.
But he did play you well, mate.
He did. I'll tell you the Martin Clune story. He won't mind because I told him I was going to tell everybody I ever knew this. But this is when we did Night Stalker. So they've involved me with every part of it. Yeah, I've spoken to somebody recently who's also written a book loosely connected with crime as a public servant, shall we say. And his experience was that he wrote the book, he got the cheque, and then he saw it on the telly. And mine was, I was involved in writing the script, a certain scenes. Certainly in the second one, I've written the whole scenes myself. I was there for shooting, not every day, but a lot of it. I did briefings with the actors beforehand. I spent a lot of time with the art department to get it looking right. Because we set out, Ed Whitmore said, and when we started it, said, we are going to make this the most authentic Met Police murder squad drama that's been made. And I think we did. Yeah. I really think we did. But yeah, anyway, so so I know Buster. We go on to Good Morning Britain. The Night Stalker one's coming out. And we meet in the green room there, and he said, who's on stage? Suzanne and Richard Madeley. And I'd worked with Suzanne Reid doing because I actually now do a documentary after the drama sort of thing, the real...
Yeah.
It's where the Real Manhunter title came from, sort of. So, he said, that's good. Yeah, I've not seen Richard for many years, and blah, blah, blah. So we go on, we do it, and we do our talk, and it all goes fine and swimmingly. Now, that was the weekend. You're a football fan, you'll understand this. That was the weekend that Jimmy Greaves died. Yeah? And
the great Jimmy Greaves, the West Ham
player after he learnt his craft at Tottenham. Yeah, and I saw a player. You might be just that little bit younger than me. Do you ever see him play?
I never saw him play, but I met him a few times because he lived near me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Brentwood was he? Or
Braintree out that way.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so Jimmy Greaves had died, and the next item on Good Morning Britain after us was about Jimmy Greaves having died on the weekend. It was a Monday, and they've got a guest. And as Martin and I'm in front, Martin's behind me, we're walking out through the double doors of the studio. In comes the next guest. They're on a commercial break. And the next guest is Paul Gascoigne.
Right.
And I see him and I think, oh. So I said, Gazza. He goes, oh, hello, mate. I said, big top season ticket holder, big fan, mate. You're a legend. Shaking his hand. Look, good to see you looking well, all this sort of thing. And he does that thing where he's, I'm okay talking to you because, I've had this for years, but actually there's someone behind you who's quite famous I'd like to talk to. And he goes, Martin Clunes. So Martin sort of goes, oh, hello, like that. And Big Gazza comes out, he goes, Martin, you're a legend, man, I'm behaving badly, and, all this shaking hands. So we go back out. He goes in to do his bit. We go back out. There's a woman in, I think it's Gazza's manager. She's in the green room, but Martin goes in there. I'm picking our bags up and stuff. And I said, Colin, who was that Scotsman I just shook hands?
Oh, brilliant.
So I said, because my dad, if it's got 4 legs and fur, a bit like my wife, he's fine. Yeah, Martin, but football's not a thing. So I said, it's Gazza, Paul Gascoigne, Martin. Paul Gascoigne, Gazza, And he's thinking, and he said, he says, I know. He said, the one that took the fishing rods and fried chicken to Raoul Moat. I said, well, yeah, he did, but that's not, that's not really what he's famous for.
I was behind the goal. We were moonlighting at the time in the Euro '96.
Oh, for the
and we were
chair.
We were working. Chair. We were doing stewarding there. There were a load of Essex coppers, and there was a guy that used to run it. And we'd go there and we'd work on the halfway line. And when Gazza scored that goal, they were expecting problems, and we were behind the goal. We were actually we'd gone the other side of the, and I was directly behind the goal when Gazza scored. That was absolutely,
it's an amazing goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was
not the best I've ever seen. Wiki Villa, 1981 Cup. I was there for that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was because my dad, as I said, he knew everybody at the Spurs in that era. And we had 2 season tickets as well that come through. My great uncle was the chauffeur for the Mayor of Enfield for many years.
Right.
And somehow he got these 2 season tickets and they sort of stayed in the family. And I couldn't go to the first game, that Cup final 81, because I was off and Bobby Sands was on his hunger strike and they thought he was going to die and they cancelled all leave.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on a green bus in Whitehall listening to it on the radio because then it was a draw and the replay was on a Thursday. And so I've got a mug over there I've had printed with like the teletext score on it, and my dad and I have got one each because it's one of those times, I said earlier about how my dad and I got really close when I became an adult sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was that season we went to most, if not all, of the away cup matches, and we went to Hillsborough for the semi-final, which was when people ended up on the pitch because Leppings Lane got crowded, if you remember. It was like the signs weren't watched, for here. And Dad had a seat, and I had a standing ticket. I was sort of on my own, but and I was in training school then, and because he went to a replay, and that was at Highbury on the following, I think, Thursday night, and we won that 3-0. And the Friday was my final exam it was either Wednesday or Thursday. I think it might have been a Thursday. Certainly the final replay was a Thursday. But it was just before my exam at training school. I decided I'm going to the Cup semi-final. So I went to that. And then we went, so I couldn't go to the actual game. We went to the semi and to the replay of the final. And we're sitting there watching it. I still go cold when I see it. They replay it a lot every year, that goal. And because it's like, Dad's 80, whatever he is now, 84 this year. And he's not as bright as he once was. He just bought an electric car, bless him.
Is he?
Yeah. Not to go electric, probably full-size one. But, they were the sort of times when... And I bought him at Christmas, actually. I got a book that Steve Perryman, the Spurs captain, sort of endorsed. It's like a coffee table book of that cup run, 1981.
Oh, really?
I was able to say, look, do you remember going here? Do you remember going there? And it was a time... The exhaust fell off on the way to Hillsborough. He had an MG Midget. We went to Hillsborough and an MG Midget in 1981.
Wow. And
just stuff like that. And it's things like that, isn't it, in your life that you... as you get old yourself and as your parents get very old, you sort of think those were the times that stand out of memories that you've had with...
Yeah.
And you get reminded of it every year on the television. I think, that
it makes you feel quite melancholy as well, because, adding the answer in the charts.
Yeah.
I bet you do. I'm a real trivia person.
Yeah.
And here's a question for you. And you'll know the answer to this. So if it was Sunderland in 79 and it was Villa, you know the answer to this, in 81, who was it in 80?
Brookie.
Yeah.
His brother was in the bet, wasn't he?
Yeah, his brother and his dad. His dad was a Met copper as well. I met him at West Ham the other week. He's smashing.
Here's the trivia from that 1981 Cup final. Do you know who the Spurs substitute was?
No.
Probably don't. A bloke called Gary Brooke.
Gary Brooke, yeah.
He went to Norwich in the end. Gary Brooke was the victim of my very first ever yellow card in football.
Was he really?
First time I got booked. He was playing for Waltham Forest. I was playing with him. Yeah.
How funny is that?
Yeah.
So
I was about 14.
We digress.
Yeah.
As I say, the Levi Belfield stuff is well documented and the great work there. And the same with the Night Stalker element. But I think it's fair to say, and you make it really, really clear that you as a SIO, us as the bosses running these jobs, we're one of a huge team. And without that team that carry out the background work, your analysts, without them, actually, crimes don't get solved. As a governor, you don't walk out and put your hand on someone's shoulder and say, you nicked my old beauty. You need to have that team. So... And I think that the analysts played a very important role in the Night Stalker.
I had no choice but to be analyst friendly, obviously at the time. But I actually, I believed in it and one of the sort of gigs I did for him a number of years was National Analysts Conference, stuff like that, because I think it's got a role in it. I mean, I always sort of say leadership's about getting the best, allowing the people you lead to do the best job they can. That's the important thing, and facilitating that and making them want to do it, making people want to work for you. I don't hate to go to sort of analogies with football all the time, but I will do. We were talking recently about the Spurs manager situation, and I said, in the job we'd all work for a governor that frightened us, but we worked a lot better with somebody who helped us.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
right.
that's, there are managers are managers,
I agree.
And that was. I saw people. I loved seeing people grow. I loved seeing, even in uniform. I loved seeing probationers come in with their first bodies and grow into sort of efficient street police officers. And equally, there's one of the family liaison officers who came to my team at Putney. Was family liaison officer for one of the victims in the Belfield case. She's detective superintendent now.
Brilliant.
And I've loved to see it, because she was always bright and very capable. But to see someone grow like that is I think it's something that you can lose in the smell of cordite and the muck and bullets sort of thing, But they're people, aren't they? They're people that you're leading, and they're people that are doing this. Ordinary people doing an extraordinary job. People say that all the time.
But it's true.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that. And you have to remember that because they're ordinary people, they've got ordinary people's foibles and faults and needs and desires and wants and all the other things. I mean, one of the loveliest things I can think of, not loveliest, but one of the sort of most poignant things I can think of in terms of Belfield was the fact that we were working long hours when it started. Because I've said this so many times, we were living the drama for real. How long have we got till he strikes again?
Yeah.
That was real. And it doesn't happen actually that often. It does in drama and fiction and books. But to live that for real is quite something. And we were working long hours. So I had one day off in the first 63 of that investigation. That was when I moved house that day. And we were doing long hours as well. And it's not just every day, but long hours each day. And yet I would still find time. I'd leave when we were at Barnes then, before we went to Putney, in the early days of it. I'd leave Barnes, I don't know, 8 o'clock-ish or something to go home maybe. And I think, is there football on the radio? Yeah, it probably is. Okay, I'll go and sit up at Twickenham Green, drive around, move about, just to give it a couple of hours, see if I can see this white van. And I did it, most days. And just do another couple of hours. But I'd see other members of my team in their own car doing exactly the same thing. And we never mentioned it to each other, because we'd have felt embarrassed. They'd have felt embarrassed, I'd have felt embarrassed. Because, are you so mad you're doing all this and you're giving the job 2 hours of your time? But we were all, there were half a dozen of us doing it, and we're doing it because we cared and we wanted to.
No, I'm with you.
And that's when you sort of think, you contrast those people, those fantastic people that I had the absolute privilege of leading.
Yeah.
With Carrick and Cousin,
And this is the thing,
and people wonder why we get annoyed and why we feel betrayed.
But the thing is, these are two people, and I'm not saying there's not other people there, and I expect that at some point, the police service will rid themselves of another load of people. Some will get found guilty, some will get found not guilty. There'll be a whole.
Yeah.
But if you look, there's 135,000 coppers in the UK. If you took a town of that size, 135,000, the percentages are very, very low when it comes to poor behaviour.
Yeah.
If you took I don't know how big Colchester's, 170,000. The criminality in a town of 135,000 is far higher than a police service of 135.
You look at what percentage of sitting MPs have got a criminal conviction?
Oh, yeah.
I saw something the other day, it's like 40%.
It's ridiculous.
I can't believe that's right. But, all doctors aren't like
Harold Shipman.
No.
And all school caretakers aren't like Huntley.
Exactly. But you have to. It's not just about that, is it? There's a whole agenda. There's the whole kind of people hating on the police is not new.
No, it's been going on for a long time.
We had. It was a brown Morris Marina, as I remember, because we had one as well in the police. But there was a brown Morris Marina that was the Haringey Police Monitoring Group or something. It used to follow you around to calls in 1981 in Sutton.
But I watch it now on social media where you have these people going around doing audits.
Yeah.
What a load of old tosh.
Yeah, it's just, but it's just... It's always been the same. I think we were lucky in one sense that we didn't have to police in the age of social media and phone cameras and everything like that. And that's not because it enabled us to get away with things, but it's just we didn't have the focus. We weren't doing everything in a microscope. And I wonder what it's like for the SIOs these days. I wonder how different it is. It probably is different.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is.
And there are fewer of them and they've got fewer resources. I'm not sure how... Yeah, basically, yeah, we technically had a budget when I was doing it for forensics and things like that. It never really mattered. If you needed something done, you got it done.
It was done.
Basically. And I wonder if it's probably not like that now because nothing else is like that in the police now.
No, it's not. But you see, another great thing that I remember from the documentary, the drama that it was your relationship with the press.
Mm.
Now, I always worked on the basis that we were doing the same job.
Yeah. The
fact is that we were doing it from a different position and they didn't have the rules that we had.
No.
So if they had information... It's better to work with them than against them. And the issues that have come out around in Lancashire...
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
No.
Like that. Because somebody would have sat down, that SIO would have sat down with the key people from the press, the sort of crime editors, and said, right, this is the score, this is what's happening, don't go there, please don't go there because that's going to cause us problems. But we'll... Yeah, because it's all documented. I did 28 separate meetings with... journalists about Belford from the time he was charged to the time he stood trial.
Wow.
Right? And I'd been given a tip by one journalist, who's a very senior journalist now, who's a friend of mine, who said, newsrooms are so small, they haven't got the time or the staff to go digging. So you can't control what they write, but you can influence it. You can steer them. So my steer was, okay, this is what he's like, this is what we've done, this is where the skeleton in the cupboard is, but we've done this and this and this and this. Briefed them, and it went really well. And as a result of that, I got asked. I did a number of occasions. I opened with a presentation the course at Bramshill National Police Training course for media management, as they called it, for divisional commanders and SIOs.
Yeah.
And one of the stunts I did in that was I had the first 5 pages of the Daily Mail that I'd scanned in, and I'd whited out all the crime stories. And literally, there was something about Margaret Beckett and foreign policy, because that's how long ago it was, and there was the weather forecast, and that was it.
That was it.
And my point was, look, if you don't engage, the Daily Mail does not get printed with 5 pages of white space. Somebody will fill that up. Now, do you want to be involved in what fills it up, or do you want to leave it to them to make up or to get from sources that you can't have any control over? And I sort of said, right, Anyone heard the press media described as parasites? And 1 or 2 people would sit down there. Right, who did O-level biology? Who knows what symbiosis is? Because that's what it is. It's not a parasitic relationship. It's symbiotic. We depend on them the same as they depend on us. And if we do that, then everything's fine. And, Elfton and the Filkin inquiry were horrible because you found that there were corrupt colleagues who were taking money. No journalist ever offered me anything more than a glass of wine, occasionally. And they knew that if they had have done that, I'd have just been, I'm not talking to you, that's not how we work. But if you look at those cases, and there were very few of them actually came to conviction, and those that did were appealed, they weren't targeting SIOs. They were targeting PCs, DCs, who somehow had access to that information, who were giving, who were, because when you're doing that job and you're that sort of high profile about it, and you are, like it or not, then, you can't, there's no way you'd get yourself in that position. And the stupid thing is, I always have people talk to me about News of the World, because obviously there was this thing with the News of the World where they found out that we had Belfield under surveillance, and actually caused us real problems because we couldn't bring the date of the arrest forward prosaically because it would have cost too much, because we'd have had Sunday working and weekly leaves and cancelled leaves and double money and all that sort of thing. And so we had to do a deal in the end where we said to them, come along and you can have the story when he's convicted, and they published it next week, but he was nicked. They just reneged on it. But I wanted to know, as I subsequently became more friendly with journalists as a result of that case, if you like, of covering the case, I wanted to know what that happened, because as we were watching something on television the other day, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Grace, the Peter James thing with John Simpson, and they got a mole, basically their local reporter from the Brighton Argus, he's turning up all the time. It turns out they're bugbear sales car, but I
don't need to watch it now.
Sorry, spoiler alert. Sorry. And I said to him, I said, you've no idea how corrosive that is of a team. If you think somebody on your team is leaking shit, it really is. And so I wanted to know, and the way that about Belfield got leaked, and with all the ramifications that could have had on that investigation, on that really, really important investigation for the Metropolitan Police, was a very senior officer talking to a journalist, having a lunch, female journalist, perhaps half his age, wanting to show how powerful and how clever and how he knows about things.
Ingratiate himself.
That's how it happened. I don't think it was even that. I don't think it was even for a story. It was just to show you, because I know everything that's going on, don't I? Did you know that there? And that's how that came out.
It got out. It's fascinating because we've got a number of mutual friends in that world now, and there are some huge scars after that issue where all the reporters were arrested, and necessity and proportionality is a byword in policing, and I'm not sure that they were necessary or proportionate.
I had one of my old team from Belfield team, proper good detective, was roped into helping them for one, and I think it was an army officer they went to arrest who'd been quite a senior army officer, relatively senior army officer, who'd been involved in it. They went to arrest him at his place down in Salisbury or somewhere like that. And he said one of these detectives, branch detectives from professional standards or DPS, whatever, there's one of these spelling computers that kids use that speak it back to them, This is why you seize that. So we're told to seize every digital device.
Oh, dear Lord.
And you just think...
You real?
Exactly that. And, it's... The big problem I have with it, the biggest effect of that and of the Filkin report and so forth, is that police have stopped to a large degree engaging with the media, and as a result we now have a new generation of journalists that have come in over the last 10 years whose default position is to criticise.
Yeah. And
when they criticise, nobody argues back.
Right. No.
Nobody explains they're wrong. You get a group think. I don't know. Did you see a thing that was doing around social media about it? There's a BBC journalist that interviewed Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, and he said, "Well, because now since you've been in charge, Twitter's full of hateful conduct, isn't it? Well, give me an example." Well, no, it just is. Yeah, but okay, if it is, then give me an example. And actually, what it turns out is that individual journalist hasn't done any research or doesn't know of any instance himself. He's saying, oh, well, the Internet Watch Foundation, it wasn't them, but it was some organisation, has said that it was. And it just becomes this group think that everybody says, so it must be true. Yeah. Everybody in my circles, in my bubble, in my echo chamber says that that's the case, so it must be true. And that's the kind of situation we're in about policing now. The default position is to say, well, yeah, they're all racist, misogynist, institutionally, whatever. Mark Rowley wouldn't even say it was institutionally. He wants to use a different word. Why? What difference does it make? What's the semantics make? But they're all saying this is the case. This is. Everyone knows it. But then, if you would go in the same way to each of those individuals and say, okay, what examples have you come across of Metropolitan Police officers being misogynistic or racist, or And then you get one of my big bugbears is this thing. Every time you see it, you see people saying black people in London are, insert large figure here, 7 times, 9 times, 13 times more likely to be stopped than white people. Okay? Right. When you actually look, there was a study done, it needs repeating, by the Home Office in 2000. Okay? The number of black people compared to the number of white people that are stopped by the Metropolitan Police is proportionate almost exactly to the number of them on the streets at the time when stops are carried out. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, it shows that report showed a very slight bias towards stopping white people more often than black people, but only just. Okay? And it's about the available people to be searched. And what they're doing, what everyone does, is say, well, okay, the population of London is X percentage white, X percentage black, X percentage brown. These are the stop and search figures, therefore it's a racist endeavour. Okay? So I've tried to explain it like this. Okay, if we had somebody said, drivers deliberately run over cats but not dogs, you'd say, what? Yeah? Well, actually, cats are more likely to get run over because most dogs are kept indoors.
Yes, they are.
And all cats are allowed to roam the streets.
So
the dogs aren't out there to be run over, the cats are.
Wise words.
That's the situation. And then what's made me really angry this week is that the reverse, when you're talking about this sort of percentage-wise, with this stuff that's been going on about grooming gangs and that's been, Home Secretary's put into the news about that, they say, oh, well, yeah, but there's a Home Office report that says that actually the most groomers are white. Most groomers and people convicted of paedophile grooming gangs are white. Yes, they are, because actually we're only 3% Asian.
Yes.
Brown in this country. Yeah. And the majority is still white. And that's why most of them are. So how come you want to use the percentage and proportions of each ethnic group in the population when you're talking about stop and search, but when you're talking about grooming and paedophile gangs and the rape of young girls, you don't then want to say, well, actually, yes, they are most white, but there are only 3% Asian in the population, and yet they are.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
And it's just this whole manipulation of things to say what people want it to say, rather than looking at the truth, just what the objective truth is. And again, social media, the echo chamber that is Twitter, it will just get repeated and repeated and repeated and regurgitated. Then people, BBC journalists in inverted commas, will repeat stuff they've read on Twitter as absolute gospel fact.
Yeah, and it's factually incorrect half the time. And the other thing is, I don't think people realise if a journalist phones up a police station or press office and says, we understand that this is happening, or we've got a story, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. If the police don't come back and say, no, that's not the truth, the story is stood up and they will publish it as the truth. So the police are... they should be coming forward and saying this is what the real things are.
Very few do,
but they don't. I just wish that, and there are some chief officers that come out, and Nick Hadley, particular from Northampton. But there's nobody that'll come out and say no, this isn't right. I mean, the Home Secretary is stronger now than I think she's ever been. I think she's more on side of law and order. Yeah. But nobody ever says, no, you're wrong, Home Secretary. Or if they do, they don't do it in public. So you're on the television a lot. I mean, you're...
a micro-star.
A micro-star, but it's good and it's good stuff. And I've had the pleasure of working with you. Yeah. And the great team at Revelation. Yeah. But what happens next, with Colin Sutton? Where
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't... I didn't plan any of this. When I first retired, the first job I had when I retired, I was delivering flowers. Yeah. For some florists, 3 florist shops in Surrey. That was just there, £8 an hour, minimum wage, whatever it was then. And it was great. I had the radio on, no stress. People were happy to see me. All the things you don't get in the police. And then, but I always had this idea of writing a book about the Belford investigation just because I thought nobody would ever know what amazing people they were, that team that I had the privilege to lead. And so that's why I did it, and that's all rather kind of snowballed, and I met Ed Whitmore, and Ed was really instrumental in making me A, finish the book, and B, getting it to telly as a drama. We got 9 million viewers twice, in each series of the drama, which got nominated for a BAFTA, for God's sakes, So my old English teacher at Latimer, I'm not sure she'd have thought that I'd get nominated, be writing something that was nominated for a BAFTA, but there you go, and there we're there. So we've done that. I'm still doing things with Revelation, doing more TV. I don't think it's right for me now to do punditry about crime. Certainly, unless it's something about cases I was involved in or I know about, it may be. But I must have had 30 odd approaches from different media outlets of broadcast and print about Nicola Bulley.
Oh yeah, I was with you on one of the days,
and I just didn't want to add my two penneth to all the rubbish and smoke and mirrors and flack and chaos that was going around that case. So I've kind of withdrawn that, and there are, I've been retired for 12 years now. So there are 12 years worth of SIOs and police officers who are more current than me who can do that, because, and I don't want to be, I won't know names, but you see it sometimes in the press particularly, somebody who retired in, before you joined is still making comment, so I'm not doing that anymore. I'm writing another book. We've made two films, two sort of documentary films or series that during last summer that have yet to air. I'm doing another series of The Real Manhunter at the moment that we're just coming to the end of. That's kind of taken a bit of a turn, because obviously I've run out of cases, because even if you do it for 9 years, you don't have 3 series worth of interesting cases. And that's how we've worked together, which is good, And it seemed, we did a bit of it in the second series where there's me talking to people like yourself who've been involved in cases, and it seemed to work. And all I'm keen to do is to kind of reinforce the values we got. What we're looking at is investigation, and we're looking at the effect on victims. We're not glorifying or the perpetrator. We don't talk about the perpetrator to any great degree. There's sometimes some pressure from the broadcast. They want things like that done. For example, they wanted us to do Cousins in this series, and I just said no, I'm not going to do that, because I don't think that it fits our values, if you like, and actually I'd rather maintain that, and I'd rather not do it if that's all the sort of stuff we've got to do. I don't want to be like every other true crime documentary that's a bit sort of sensationalist. I want to actually look at people like yourself who make it happen, and people like Linda Jones, who
what a lady.
I went along to the school the other week, and
did you, St Clair's?
To her tree. Her tree. It's quite good because the deputy head's got a big Tottenham Hotspur flag in his office as well. Yeah, so I quite enjoy going there. So there's that. I've got an idea about 1 or 2 more things that I want to get involved in that are slightly different. I mean, Revelation have got some things for me to do. I want to do some more podcasting. Not this sort of chatting stuff, but you probably know, you might know actually, but I did one during most of lockdown with a lady called Jo McSorley, who was an ex-Beeb journalist who got involved in Deep Cut I did in 2000. And it stuck with her like it stuck with me. And it was really successful. And we really, we actually found another murder, or another death rather, that I didn't know about as the SIO in Surrey. And everything had been kept quiet about. And we went and found this guy's family, and we found out, and they were like a Scottish army family, three sons who all went in the army, and their dad was in the army as well. And they just didn't like to make a fuss. But there were questions. And funny enough, one of them was one of the brothers left the army and became an Essex PC.
Oh, really?
At Southend. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I did that, and I thought it was quite a powerful, and it was nice because we were doing it for Audible. It was done with a proper producer, sounding, and all the bells and whistles that you'd get, and they paid. We were paid as performers and presenters, and investigators to a degree, rather than sort of being funded by the fact that it's a podcast and the way that most podcasts are funded, because that was for them. Jane's keen to work again. She's done another really good one, actually, not too recently, about an American who turned up in a COVID ward in Scotland who was a wanted murderer.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that story?
Yeah.
And listen to Jane's podcast. It's fantastic. And she's really good. So I've been in touch with her and she'd like to do something again with us. But I've got an idea and I don't know who to do it with or how to do it, but I want to tell the story, the cop story about Broadwater Farm. The fact is that I know, Revelation know, that going to broadcasters to say, we want to tell a story about what it was like to police Broadwater Farm in the 1980s, ain't going to interest them.
No, it's not.
In the same way that Revelation can't. You've got Norval Roberts' book and that story about him.
I know.
He's trailblazing as the,
first black police officer in the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah. Nobody will touch it as a TV program. Wrong sort of black man.
But that can't be right, can it?
Of course it's not right.
That cannot be right.
That's the situation we're in. That's the situation we're in.
But you see, what upsets me about this, and I will say this because they're honourable people at Revelation, there is nothing that they've touched that has undermined the police.
No. And nothing that I do. I don't.
But there becomes professional jealousies in some of these things.
Oh yeah, but you get that all the time. But I'll tell you something that's interesting. When lockdown happened, I won't sort of say. I'll try and make it as oblique and as sort of vague as possible. But there was a television company who approached me to see if I'd be interested in assisting them because they wanted an SIO to assist them with the project they were doing, a broadcast project.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, okay, that's interesting. I don't have to really do anything. It's lockdown, I'm sitting at home writing a book, actually. But yeah, I'll do it. Okay, well, can you come on the Zoom and do a presentation and talk? So, yeah, I'll talk to you. So anyway, I do it. And this is a production company, but a big production company. And they said, right, they're brilliant. You're the man for the job. You're what we want. That's exactly what we want. So all we need to do is just get it okay by the broadcaster and we'll sort it out. Fine. Get an email from this woman about 2 weeks later saying, so sorry, we spoke to the broadcaster and despite our recommendation, they've said that they would rather have a female and or ethnic minority SIO on this occasion. Okay. So I replied, said, okay, fair enough. I said, thanks for telling me. It's a tough gig being an old white man in TV at the moment. I never got a reply to that. But the point is, it's not actually that's the attitude they take. It's the fact that they're entirely comfortable in emailing that to me and telling me that. Because
it would have been easier to say, I'm really sorry.
So we could tell someone better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually they did have a female ethnic minority ex-police officer who did what they wanted to do, who'd never been an SIO in her life. But that's by the by. I don't care, but I just don't like being in a world where things aren't as straightforward as you want them to be, or you expect they are, No,
it's frustrating.
And another, it's the same broadcaster actually, I won't say which one, but the same broadcaster, we pitched something to them from Revelation and they came back and said, no, we're only interested in police stories at the moment if they involve corruption or racism.
But that's so... Someone has got to fight the good fight and someone has got to...
Nobody does.
No, because it doesn't make good television.
No, exactly that. But yet, we've proved that. We've proved that with Real Manhunter. We've quadrupled the viewing figures for that slot on a Monday night for Sky Crime by presenting good police work, showcasing good police work, and saying and showing people how they can rely, how they can be made safer, how we can do the thing we're meant to be doing. If and that's in many ways that's much more my motivation for writing the books and writing those, because the truth of the matter is, you don't become a millionaire writing true crime books.
No.
It's not J.K. Rowling or Frederick Forsyth,
No.
You don't even become a millionaire writing true crime books that get turned into ITV 9 million viewer documentaries,
No, of course.
So it's not about that, but it's about, say, it all started off, I wanted to showcase the fact that I had this privilege of leading such an exceptional bunch of people and why. And it's all stemmed from there. And I've rolled with the waves so far. I'll keep rolling with them until they subside,
Well, Colin, we've been chatting for a while. Before we conclude this interview, is there anything you'd like to add, alter or correct in what you've said so far?
I love that, and I can't remember. It's so long since we started. I'm getting older. I can't remember what I said to correct anything. No, I mean, I think that the stuff we got to at the end. Look, I've been fantastically lucky. I've been so lucky in my whole life with things that have happened to me where I found myself in situations where I couldn't have dreamt of being, and I've done. We haven't touched all the other madcap things that I've done.
We could do that again.
Yeah, but the selling cars, selling classic minis to Mexico, the DJing. Yeah. All the sort of stuff that I've somehow got involved with, and it's just pushing yourself. It's just pushing yourself. Yeah, why can't I do that? And that's all I say to everyone. I say it to my kids. I'll say it. I've got 3 grandchildren now, 3 grandsons. Brilliant. Now. I'll say that to them. Just push yourself.
There's nothing that they can't do. No. Nothing they can't do. And I'm the same, mate. I just keep going. And
Henry Ford was it. I used to have this. I had two kind of mantras, or whatever you'd call them, sort of things on the wall in my office when we were doing Belfield. One was a verse from my school song, the Latimer school song, which says, "Clear before us the task heroic, high and everlasting fame, glorious end from small beginning, priceless worth of honoured name," and goes on, yeah. And the other was a quote, I think it's from Henry Ford, which says, "If you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be correct." And that's the big one. Absolutely. That's the big one.
Well, Colin, pleasure. Thank you so much for your time,
Absolute
sir.
Pleasure.
And I've really enjoyed our chat.
I've enjoyed it as
Thanks,
well.
Mate.
Yes. Cheers.